WCC.com/champions. Together, we are Louisiana loyal.
Hanny time. Hanny time. A daily look at sports from our resident historian. Your sports break during your lunch break. Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studios. Here's Charles Hannegriff.
And we welcome you into Handy Time 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Charles Hannegriff, Casey Gaines, Taylor Sharp running the board here. Thank you for making us a part of your day. 12:30, Mike Scarborough from TigerBait.com will be with us. They broke the story on Walker Howard yesterday, entering his name into the transfer portal. We'll get Mike's thoughts on that at the bottom of the hour. In about 15 minutes, Chris Rosvoglu from Boot Crew Media. We'll talk Saints with Chris as they get into the off season. Some interesting comments from Mickey Loomis on his radio show. We'll talk to Chris about that, and we'll take some questions from you in the chat. Let's start with the story that has had Baton Rouge buzzing here for the last 18 hours or so, which is Walker Howard putting himself into the transfer portal, LSU quarterback. So there's a lot of things here. First of all, the quarterback position lends itself to transfers. Everybody knows this now. It has become so much different to recruit quarterbacks now than it was even 5 years ago. It is the most transferable position in all of college sports, I would say. This one stings, though, for LSU fans, because Walker Howard is somebody that LSU fans know. They knew his dad. They watched him play here. They watched him play down in Lafayette. They watched him come to LSU with a great deal of fanfare. We watched him on the practice field. His talent is obvious, and he was somebody that fans were looking forward to seeing play here. So him moving out, it stings, even though LSU has other quarterbacks on the roster and other quarterbacks that are coming to be on the roster. And this is not a situation where LSU is left high and dry without a quarterback. But Howard is somebody that, again, we followed his career for a while, and it was somebody that we were looking forward to seeing play as a starter for LSU one day. But Brian Kelly has the same problem that every college coach now faces when they put together a roster of quarterbacks, which is, how do you divide 100 by 3? How do you divide 100% of the reps by 3 different players? And don't say 33 and a third, because that's not an acceptable way to build a football team. If you split your reps equally among all of your quarterbacks, even in spring, you're going to probably be behind. So what is Brian Kelly to do here? More than likely, if you have, slipped in the truth serum and said a year ago, okay, you have Jaden Daniels coming in as a transfer, you have Garrett Nussmeier who's returning, and you have Walker Howard who is incoming. How many of those players do you expect to have for the 2023 season? He almost certainly would have told you 2, Walker Howard and one of the other 2. The idea that all 3 of them would be available going into the 23 season seemed like a long shot. And it was, because one of the ones was going to leave. It was just the one that we thought was the least likely to leave. More than likely, it was going to be Jaden Daniels was going to put in 1 year here and move on. He had a great year and decided to come back. So what is Kelly to do? Say to the quarterback that just led them to 10 wins and an SEC Western Division title and a win over Alabama, I'm sorry, we no longer have a scholarship available for you. No, you're not going to do that. So do you go to Garrett Nussmeier, who is now 2 years deep into your program and has played a little bit and has shown a desire to come back for a third year and compete for the job and has tremendous potential? Do you tell him, no, I'm sorry, we don't have any reps for you? No, you don't do that either. So do you tell Walker Howard, listen, we have reps for you, but we do not have starter reps for you right now. And Frankly, the other two guys have been here a little bit longer, so you're going to have to wait a little bit longer. What else is he supposed to do? Is he supposed to completely rearrange all of his rep distribution for somebody who hasn't played? No, that's not what you do. So if you're Walker Howard, do you say, well, I'll sit around and I'll wait. I'll continue to take limited reps and probably scout team reps for another year in the hopes that, a year from now, the situation will clear up a little bit and maybe I'll be the starter. But maybe not. Because if Garrett Nussmeier plays and plays well in the 2023 season, he'll probably be in line to be the starter in 2024. So if you're Walker Howard, you say, well, if this is the case, this wasn't what we foresaw a year ago, there are other paths to playing time that I can pursue elsewhere. I wanted to play here, but there's not going to be playing time for me here anytime soon. I'm going to move on. That's understandable as well. A lot of this, I know everybody wants to fit somebody for a black hat with this. It's the coach's fault. It's the kid's fault. It's the parents' fault. It's pick your favorite villain in this thing. But the way I see it is this is largely about timing. If Walker Howard had been here a year earlier or a year later, it might have been a different deal. Think about it from the Joe Burrow standpoint. If Joe Burrow had been a year younger or a year older, there's a pretty good chance he never leaves Ohio State. But what was the coach, I hate to take up for Urban Meyer, but what was he supposed to do? He had a quarterback in Dwayne Haskins who had put some numbers up and would put up a great year in the year that Burrow left. I think he threw 50 touchdown passes. They thought the world of Burrow. They liked him. They thought he had tremendous potential. But he wasn't Joe Burrow yet. So what was Urban Meyer supposed to do? Say, well, no, I'm going to give you the job, or I'm going to give you more reps, but Haskins is still my guy. You got to wait at least another year. And Burrow said, okay, I'm not. I'm going somewhere else. And he came here. So you say, well, you do a better job of splitting up the reps. Let me tell you another Joe Burrow story. When Burrow was here in 2018 and wasn't yet Joe Burrow, there were 4 quarterbacks on the LSU roster: Burrow, Miles Brennan, Lowell Narcisse, and Justin McMillan. I remember this press conference very well. It was in the LSU weight room. It was somewhere in the middle of camp in August of 2018. And Ed Orgeron came in there, and he had some notes written down about the progress of the quarterback battle. And he gave out what the reps had been. And I only remember it because it was such an odd number. And I don't remember exactly what it is, but you'll get the idea. He said something along the lines of, Joe Burrow has taken 451 reps with the first team so far here in camp, and Miles Brennan has taken 450. It was within one. And the total number of reps was approaching 1,000. It might have even been more than 1,000. I don't remember. He was trying to keep those two guys engaged. And he was also trying to keep Narcisse and McMillan engaged. They were getting reps, but they were getting fewer reps. He was trying to hold the quarterback room together. He was trying to divide things as evenly as he could. And what happened? 2 of the quarterbacks left anyway. So if you try to divide this thing, at some point there's going to be separation. Those guys were on the field. They could see the separation. Burrow was better. He was going to get the reps. He was going to be the starter. And so the guys that weren't going to play left, even though Orgeron went to great lengths to try to divide up the reps. That's what happened here. They have looked at least for the 2023 season, they looked at this through all of the practices in 2022, probably the bowl practices, and what they're looking ahead to in the spring, which is, at this point in time, Jaden Daniels is the starter, Garrett Nussmeier is the backup, and Walker Howard is the third-string guy. Walker Howard may go to another school and throw for 4,000 yards next year. Could easily happen. But that seat's not open here right now. I understand why the young man's making this decision. I don't blame him. I don't blame the coach. This is inconvenient timing, and it will happen every single year from here on out. You are never going to put a quarterback room together like what LSU had 20 years ago. You're not going to put on a team Matt Malk as your starter, Jamarcus Russell as a red shirt, Matt Flynn as a red shirt, and have Russell sit for a year, alternate the next year while Flynn sits, start the next 2 years while Flynn sits, and then Flynn quarterbacks in his final year, and they win the national championship on either end of that. It's never going to happen again. There used to be a very systematic way of doing this. You recruited one quarterback, if you were smart. You recruited one quarterback a year. You tried not to recruit two because you knew one would leave. So you recruited one a year. And over a 4 or 5 year period, with the red shirts, probably you lost two and you kept three. It's not going to be that way anymore. You're not going to keep the same three quarterbacks on your team more than a year. And if the thought of that panics you, understand that of the top 15 teams in next year's too early top 15, we did this earlier in the week, 5 of the top 15 teams next year are not only dealing with transfer quarterbacks, but they're dealing with transfer quarterbacks with a massive amount of experience. USC has Caleb Williams. He was a transfer. LSU has Jaden Daniels. He was a 3-year starter as a transfer. He'll be in his 5th year. Bo Nix was a 3-year starter at Auburn. Started his 4th year at Oregon. They're going to get a 5th year out of him. Michael Penix is going into his 6th year at Washington next year. His 2nd year at Washington, his 6th year in college, and his 5th year as a starter. Cameron Rising is going into, Cameron Rising is not a transfer. Sam Hartman is the other name I was looking for. Sam Hartman started 4 years at Wake Forest. I'm sorry, 5 years. 13,000 yards. Going into his 6th year, he's going to be at Notre Dame. So starting a transfer is, in my opinion, it's going to be about a 50-50 deal. Of the top 25 teams in the country, you will probably see maybe half of them with transfer quarterbacks. It's just how it works now. Where will Walker Howard end up? I don't have any better a guess than what has been put out there, which is TCU, where Jack Besh will be, and they are good friends, and there is a quarterback opening there, or Florida, where he has a relationship with Billy Napier, going back to their time in Lafayette, and there is an opening at quarterback there. My guess is that he will end up at one of those two spots. Given a choice at this point, I would give TCU the edge over Florida. That's just my opinion. Nobody has told me that. That is just my best guess. So this one stings, and it's unfortunate that we're not going to get to see this kid play for LSU because everybody wanted to. But the timing of it and the current landscape of college football has made that impossible. We'll take a break. We're going to talk more about this topic with Mike Scarborough when he comes on at the bottom of the hour. Next, though, is Chris Rosvoglu from Boot Crew Media. We're going to talk about the Saints' end of the season wrap-up. That is next. This is Hanny Time, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is Hanny Time.
Getting close to time to purchase a new vehicle for me, so I'll be at Acura and Infinity of Baton Rouge. Here to open 2023, 3.9% APR for 60 months on most models on the lot right now. And there's loyalty cash of $1,000 coming back on all of your MDXs and your TLXs. 2-year, 24,000-mile complimentary scheduled maintenance on all 2023 models. And if you're in the market for a pre-owned vehicle, there's a large selection on the lot right now. 7-year, 100,000-mile powertrain coverage, roadside assistance, first scheduled maintenance is free, and a complimentary service vehicle while your car is under maintenance. It's very easy to buy a vehicle there, very comfortable atmosphere, transparency, and the pricing. It's why my wife and I have continued to go back time and time again, as we will here very shortly at Acura and Infinity of Baton Rouge.
In times of need, get a full list of phone numbers, websites, and other important emergency information on the Demco Stormwatch page at 1045ESPN.com.
This is a house call. This is a follow-up appointment. This is a diabetes checkup. This isn't just more convenient care, it's more advanced care. This is innovating healthcare at Louisiana's #1 hospital, Ochsner.
I've got that blue sky, I've got that sunshine.
Service Master Elite create clean, disinfected work environments. As a local business, we take pride in serving the New Orleans and Baton Rouge areas. Our cleaning protocols follow CDC and OSHA standards for healthcare settings, offices, senior living, restaurants, and industrial plants. Contact Service Master Elite to get your operation ready for reopening with germ disinfection cleaning. Service Master Elite, the trusted choice in professional cleaning since 1996.
There it is, the extra mile, on the border of expected and extraordinary for those willing to go further, like vans customized for work or play, with safety and tech to keep you connected, supported by a 5-star sales, service, and finance team, and backed by the 1-star you know. So go the extra mile. It's never crowded, because so few have what it takes to go there. Mercedes-Benz Vans.
Eli's always been into grilling. It took us a while to see it, but the signs were there.
What are you doing, Eli?
I knew grilling was my thing. I have been talking about it throughout my career.
Happy with the results?
I am. Got the new grill from barbecueguys.com. It performed great.
My advice, as I always told my boys,
do more of what you're born to do.
Barbecue Guys, for those who were born to grill.
You want cheese on your burger, Pops?
I'll take a little cheese.
Start your day with news and newsmakers. Start your day with traffic, weather, and local stories that are important to you. Kickstart your day every day. Mornings with Brian.
On Fridays, OTB. Let's celebrate, people. The weekend's about to begin, and we get you ready for the NFL playoffs. Look forward to packing the PMAC for Simone on Sunday. A brand new DJ Dome is also some champagne shenanigans. Off the bench, 7 to 10 a.m., 104.5 ESPN.
This is Hanny Time with Charles Hannegriff on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Got a complete podcast posted right now, the Hannycast, 104.5ESPN.com or wherever you get podcasts. Gordy and I spent pretty much the entire podcast talking about Walker Howard and the LSU quarterback situation. So you want to check that out. It is posted at the moment. Let's bring in Chris Rosvoglu from Boot Crew Media talking about the end of the Saints season. Chris, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm doing well.
All right. This is sort of the postscript, if you will, of the 2022 season for New Orleans. Let's start with Mickey Loomis's comments earlier in the week that he wants to take a little bit of time to assess the roster, to assess what's going on, and that there has to be some kind of mutually agreeable circumstances for the next step for Sean Payton. What did you take from Loomis's comments earlier this week?
Yeah, I think he kind of just pretty much said what we were all expecting. I think this is a process where, a lot of Saints fans want to, put it into terms where it's like, hey, just send him to the highest bidder. But it's one of those that Sean's going to have to pick the spot, and then they'll work out the trade. But I do think it is good news that the teams that have expressed interest so far are all teams that have the draft compensation needed to make a trade with the Saints, but also at the same time not cripple their own kind of draft assets and capital theirs. But overall, I think what Mickey Loomis was hinting at is something we should have all expected. They have a really tight relationship. This is something they've probably talked about for at least the last couple of months, since Sean's made it pretty clear that he'll coach at some point. And now we just have to wait and see which team he ends up choosing, if it is one this year.
Since you brought up the draft compensation, there's any wide range of speculation as to what Sean Payton is worth draft-wise. What's your opinion?
I think that the minimum is somewhere around a mid-first-round pick, and I think that Sean Payton's the type of coach that if you stick him on any of the teams he's been rumored to, I would say that their win total jumps up by a decent bit. You think of Denver, if he can get Russell Wilson playing decent football with that defense they already have, that's a team that's probably competing for a wild card spot. You look at a team like the Texans, they've been towards the bottom of the AFC. If you give them Sean Payton and you draft a Bryce Young or a C.J. Stroud, all of a sudden you can start to see the light at the end of the tunnel there. And I could say the same thing for a Cardinals team. If Kyler and Sean Payton hit it off, that could be a really nice coach-quarterback duo. So I think you start with asking for at least a first-round pick. Think of the Texans. Do they give up pick number 2? Probably not. But pick number 12 seems pretty fair for a guy like Sean Payton. You look at a team like the Broncos. They still have pick number right now about 29. That and maybe a day 2 or day 3 pick, that should probably be enough for a guy like Sean Payton. I don't know if you'll ever get true value, but at least a day 1 pick makes it feel a little bit better.
Do you take Payton at his word that the most important thing is the owner? Because I got to be honest with you, I'm a little bit bullish on that. I got a hard time seeing Sean Payton working for Michael Bidwell or Jim Irsay or Cal McNair in Arizona or Indianapolis or Houston. I don't know. The ownership situation in Denver is new, so it's harder to ascertain. But I got a hard time because Chris, that's the one thing you can't fix if you're a coach. If you got a bad quarterback, you can go get another one. If you got a bad staff, you can change them out. You can change out players all day. But that owner you're stuck with him. There is no way out if you got a bad owner. Do you take Payton at his word there?
I want to, because he said it so many times throughout, this, even the off season, even the last couple of weeks. I mean, he was on Fox this past, I believe, Sunday and said, ownership's what I'm looking at and being functional. But interestingly enough, you talked about the Cardinals. That's a group where the ownership group is, I'd say, less than ideal. And even the Texans that come out yesterday, requesting to have permission to speak with Sean Payton, their ownership group, I feel like, gets criticized almost every other month in the NFL, and that's a spot where they just went to one and done with 2 coaches back-to-back seasons. So I think that that's interesting, but he has a chance to kind of show that with what he does. He's already scheduled an interview with the Broncos for next Tuesday. They have a new ownership group in there, so we could kind of see what they're all about. I feel like it's too early to make a judgment call on them, which is probably a good thing. But Sean can really kind of put action to those words by whether or not he sits down with these teams like the Texans and sits down with the Cardinals. But I will say the Cardinals' job is interesting because although the ownership group part might not fit in and they have their own concerns, he would be able to bring in his own GM. He would have possibly a top 5 pick if that's not what they move for Sean Payton in a trade with the Saints. He would have a guy like Kyler Murray. So maybe the ownership group is kind of just talk that he's giving people right now to make it sound better, and he'll figure it out later. But it's something that we're going to have to monitor, and I think we'll see another team or 2 within the next week probably request permission for him.
Arizona's interesting because while they don't have a lot of young, inexpensive, productive players that they could trade like Denver does or even like Houston does, to be honest with you, they did put DeAndre Hopkins on the trade block to acquire some additional draft capital. So what the Cardinals do have is draft picks galore. They don't have to part with that first one to make a fair deal, especially if they're able to move Hopkins for, if we look at some of the comparables, if they get for him a little bit more than what the Falcons got for Julio Jones when they traded him. Jones was a couple years old. They got a 2 and a 4 from the Titans. You might be able to do a little bit better than that with Hopkins. They've got a big draft haul that they could put together a nice package. What is next from a personnel standpoint, Chris? We saw them make the move on Michael Thomas's contract that I would guess, lead to him being released from the organization. What other big moves do you think will affect this roster as far as guys going out?
Well, I think what they have to figure out now is what are you going to do with Marcus Davenport and David Onyemata? I know that the void dates on their deals got pushed back a little bit under a month, so they technically have until mid-March, but those are two players that they are getting a little bit older. Their contract situations are interesting because they're going to be on the books regardless next year. It's a matter of whether or not you want to keep them while they're still counting towards the salary cap. And, Marcus Davenport's in a weird spot because he only had half a sack. It was a little bit of an underwhelming year. And Onyemata, on the flip side, started off kind of not producing well and then finished the season really strong. And the Saints may want to bring him back. So I think those are two guys they'll look at. And then another situation which hasn't really been talked about enough yet, but I'm sure will ramp up within the next month or so, is going to be what to do with Jameis Winston. I think if we kind of read between the lines of what Dennis Allen said following Week 18, it seems like Jameis Winston won't be back. He talked about how at first he didn't play because of an injury, and then they made, the conclusion that they felt better about Andy Dalton and thought he could win more games for them. So when he starts saying that, and it's not so much about the injuries, it's about the player he prefers, I'd imagine something gets done with Jameis Winston's contract there. And then the Saints got to figure out the coaching staff. And I think that's something that within the next week to 10 days, we should hear some type of announcement. I would be surprised if they run back the same offensive staff that they just had.
Chris, the Jameis Winston thing is, I think it's done based on, what you said, about what Allen said. How about Andy Dalton? He's not under contract for next year. They got to decide if they want to bring him back. And do they want to bring him back as a starter? Do they want to bring him back as a backup to somebody else? And if so, who? Do they want to bring him back as a bridge if they draft a quarterback, and that may not be in the first round? Dalton doesn't have to stay here. He can go somewhere else. So what do they do with him?
Yeah, he most certainly can. And I think the thing about Dalton that's so fascinating is if the Saints make a move early, let's say, before this whole free agency frenzy starts, then I think they're kind of tipping their hand and showing you that, maybe they're into another year of Andy Dalton being a bridge quarterback. And let's say a Sean Payton trade goes down and the Saints are picking somewhere in the mid to late first rounder. Maybe they take a quarterback then. Andy Dalton starts for the 2023 season. And then at some point, either during next season or the following one, they kind of turn it over to the young quarterback and see what they can do. So I think that's going to be fascinating because I think Andy Dalton, for all the criticism he's received at times this year, he's played well enough that there's got to be some team out there that might say, hey, we'll take a shot on you, whether it's a bridge quarterback, whether it's paying as a high-end backup. I mean, we're seeing around the league backup quarterbacks are getting more and more valuable as the years go on. So I think for Andy Dalton, if I'm him, you go to that negotiation table and you kind of put it forward that, look, if you're going to get a contract, it's got to be something to be a bridge quarterback. I don't know if he's going to go from starting 14 games to getting paid $3 to $4 million and saying, yep, that'll do it. I think he's earned a little bit more than that. But I think it will tip their hand a little bit, and I don't know if the Saints will really make a decision on whether or not they're going older or younger at quarterback till the Sean Payton thing gets figured out, because I'm curious to see where they'll be picking, if they're picking in the first round.
What are your thoughts on the future of Trevor Penning and what the organization thinks of him? He's got an enormous amount of progress, potential. But Chris, this is two major injuries in his rookie year. I'm just wondering what the thought of the organization is about his future.
Yeah, I mean, the injury aspect has to be a little bit of frustration because these are injuries that are kind of freak things. But the frustrating part of this all is in Week 18, there were a lot of big runs that Alvin Kamara had. And when you go back at the film, you're like, okay, Trevor Penning opened up that lane. He opened up that lane. And you start to see why he was drafted where he was in the first round and why the Saints really liked his potential. But at the same time, to your point, those are two major injuries to each foot that he's had. And you start to wonder if he's not ready till June, what is the developmental process for him like? Do we have to grade it a little bit differently where maybe by year 3, year 4, we get to see the full picture? What is it? So I think it's a little bit of frustration. I know the Saints will be patient with him because we are seeing in the run game, even at a early stage in his career, what he can do. But you can't really avoid it. If there is a third injury at some point early in his career, you start to wonder, well, what's the outlook? The Saints brought in Trevor Penning in large part because their franchise left tackle before him also dealt with injuries. So the worst possible scenario would be to go down that route again with having more injuries at that spot. So hopefully he gets cleared up and maybe he gets the bad injury breaks out of the way early in his career. But it's hard to kind of ignore the fact that that's 2 now within the span of the last 8 months.
Yeah, there's no doubt that he can play. It's just, can he play? Is he going to be available to them? Chris, we appreciate your contributions all throughout this season. It's been a real pleasure working with you, and we'll be checking in with you, obviously, as the offseason progresses. The NFL never sleeps, you know that. So we'll be talking with you soon. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I had a blast. Thank you, guys.
Chris Rosvoglu from Boot Crew Media. When we come back, Mike Scarborough from TigerBait.com, they broke the story on Walker Howard going into the transfer portal at TigerBait.com. We'll have Mike on with us when we return. This is Hanny Time, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is Hanny Time.
If you're a business owner and having a problem with staffing, it's one of the biggest, most time-consuming issues that business owners today have. Let Tiger Labor and Staffing help you out. They'll take care of your screening, your training, your payroll problems, your background checks, all of your employment expenses so you can get back to work. You won't have to worry about unqualified applicants. You won't have to worry about no-show interviews. Let Tiger Labor and Staffing control your labor expenses, whether you need somebody for a day, a week, a month, or longer. Your temp to hire option is only 60 days. That's the lowest in the industry. If you're looking for a job, Tiger Labor and Staffing welcomes skilled and unskilled labor. They'll match you with a job that fits and get quick turnarounds on pay. So get your work done without wasting a lot of time. Take the frustration out of it. Tiger Labor and Staffing. Success begins with the eye of the tiger. Go to tigerlabor.com.
Our listeners fire off their opinions on the jimsfirearms.net hotline at 499-1045. Keep listening for your next chance to shoot us your thoughts with the jimsfirearms.net hotline on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Bayou Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram has $10,000 off MSRP on all new 2022 Black Widow Jeep Gladiators in stock. All new Bayou vehicles come with a 1 million mile powertrain warranty and free delivery. If you need sales or service, the crew at Bayou is going to do right by you.
At Auctioner, we know healing is a team sport. That's why we've partnered with world-renowned orthopedic surgeon Dr. James Andrews to create the Auctioner Andrews Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute. Whether you're a professional athlete or a weekend warrior, our team of specialists are dedicated to getting you back in the game. So whatever your reasons are for reaching your personal best, we've only got one: you. Auctioner Andrews Institute. Long live you.
You ever heard the tale of the misunderstood bull? A menacing beast who was born to float. A force of nature. The embodiment of grace. Quite grand, yet quiet and nimble. The Infiniti QX80.
Experience the Infiniti QX80 at your local Infiniti retailer.
Louisiana. It's a place defined by culture, by pride, by passion, by people who do more than love this place. They celebrate it, elevate it, champion it. They are the individuals who embody what makes Louisiana great. The companies that make Louisiana a better place to work and live. The nonprofits leading transformational change in our communities. Champions of Louisiana are all around us, and LWCC is proud to celebrate them because we've always been Louisiana loyal, supporting the workers, the innovators, the change agents of this great place we call home. Who are the champions around you? Together, we can share their stories. Together, we can help our home state thrive. Together, we are Louisiana loyal. Always.
I've been doing business with Luba for 25 years. They're dependable, trustworthy. It's just the attention to detail with our clients.
Our folks have years and years of experience. They're highly trained professionals, but many companies have that asset. What I'd like to
This is Hanny Time with Charles Hannegriff on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Remember, you can always get the show on demand, 1045ESPN.com. Let's bring in now from TigerBait.com, Mike Scarborough, our good friend. Had the story first yesterday about Walker Howard going into the transfer portal. Mike, good afternoon. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us.
Hey, glad to be with you, Charlie.
All right.
It's kind of a bittersweet deal yesterday for sure after covering Walker since he was a ninth grader.
Yeah, and that's where I want to start because I know you have known you lived in Lafayette for a long time. You've known the family. You've known the kid. You did a really touching video with him, helped him do that when he committed to LSU that included, his late mother. So yesterday, a bittersweet, but was it expected at this point? We knew that there – 3 quarterbacks in the room was not what anybody expected 6 months ago, but did you expect this?
Well, I said it on my show last night that I actually had the transfer portal story written since the Tuesday after the SEC championship game. And then it looked like after a meeting with Brian Kelly and Joe Sloan that things were going to be a bit better. And I just think it's been an agonizing back and forth, and Walker and Jamie and playing the scenarios and how it was going to work, how the reps were going to be distributed in spring. And I just think they figured that there was no way that the caliber of the reps with the twos in spring football and maybe even some ones that were going to be given to Nussmeier were going to be equal. And and then you also have to factor in, okay, and if you do stick around, and I see a real scenario where Nussmeier, it doesn't go anywhere regardless of what happens in the spring. If you're the number 3 quarterback, are you back with the scout team in the fall, which is on the opposite practice field from the offense, or are you just the number 3 guy standing over off to the side? Because once the season starts or you get to game week, the number 2 quarterback really doesn't get a whole lot of reps at practice either. So what does the third guy get? Because you would assume Ricky Collins would be running the scout team. So and then Colin Hurley comes in at midterm. So this scenario was not something that the staff, you can blame them. You can't blame them. They didn't expect both Daniels and Nussmeier to be back, and so. When we were running the scenarios, because when Daniels originally signed with LSU, it was supposed to be a 1-year deal, and he was going to go pro. And we thought all season, would Nussmeier be the one that would hit the portal?
Yeah.
And but that's why these quarterback scenarios you can run them in your head and backwards and forwards, and there's always just some surprises. Then you got the old timers, and they say, well, why didn't the guy stick around? And If I was a quarterback, I love LSU so much I'd stick till maybe I could get an opportunity as a 5th-year senior to finally be the starter. And these kids just don't do that these days.
No, I said that in the open that the scenario that they played from 2003 to 2007, with multiple successful quarterbacks, that's where they were all on the same roster at one time and progressed through. That's not going to happen again. Of course, Mike, the real fear for LSU, and I don't know what Brian Kelly is supposed to do here. He can't divide all of these reps up into 3. Is that if Nussmeier doesn't win the job, that he would consider transferring, and you end up with a situation where you're down to 1 experienced quarterback. But I don't know what Brian Kelly's supposed to do about that either, other than say, listen, we're going to let you practice in the spring. We're going to give you an opportunity to go play. He can't name Nussmeier the starter right now to guarantee him a spot. So other than just say, hey, go play, go compete, I don't really know what his other options are.
No, it's like I said, you can't blame him. I know initially when there was a meeting in early December, like he did with every LSU player, exit interviews, and obviously Brian Kelly did a fantastic job because he didn't have as many kids hit the portal as you think. Of course, it's not over with yet, and there's probably 1 or 2 more they're going to get in there, but most of the ones that have gotten in there have been expected, except for maybe 1. Scratching head on Tolan a bit. But yeah, I don't blame Brian Kelly or Joe Sloan at all. Look, you thought the scenario was really going to put Nussmeier was going to be the one in the pinch, but I think overall what this has done is the free COVID year is just really caused these issues, not just for LSU, but everybody. And so, I mean, Jaden Daniels' eligibility should have been up, but COVID gave him another year.
Yeah, there's a lot of such scenarios like that. We went through 5 teams in next year's top 15 are dealing with transfer quarterbacks that are working on a COVID year, that have a COVID year that is in play here. Mike, where might Walker Howard end up?
I think I'm about 98, 99% certain he's going to end up at TCU. And I think that's partially, people were shocked, but I honestly believe that during the original recruiting process, that TCU actually finished second to LSU. A lot of people thought maybe it was Notre Dame. I believe it was TCU. They actually loved that visit up there and liked what they saw. But I think a big part of it too is because of his love for LSU. He doesn't want to go in the SEC, and but I know I've been hearing. I've got reports of. I know Ole Miss and their group up there are offering some huge NIL deals to try to convince him to consider Ole Miss. He's got a great relationship with Napier at Florida, but I think it's TCU.
Yeah, so in his recruitment at TCU, that was all under Gary Patterson's staff, correct?
Yeah.
So what kind of
they love the campus, the area, and
yeah. What kind of relationship does he have? Any relationship with Sonny Dykes? I guess would be my question.
Yeah, I'd have to find out who those guys are. But one thing I've known since Jamie's got connections to so many of these guys. Guys going back to the Hallman years. He knows a lot of these coaches at different places.
Yeah, Mike, does this end on good terms, or basically this came down to a timing thing and some unforeseen scenarios as far as a quarterback room? Again, I know when something like this happens, the instinct is to say somebody's got to be at fault here. Somebody lied to somebody. Somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do. Somebody is acting irrationally. I don't get the feeling that happened, but I don't know. Do you?
I think, look, a lot of ears perked up when Brian Kelly said, I've got 2 elite quarterbacks coming back, and Walker Howard, kind of self-correcting. I think that raised some eyebrows in Lafayette, but I don't think that was the overriding deal. I think it really, and then maybe there's some little stuff out there in NIL deals that somebody got and the other one didn't get, and I just think overall that the biggest deal is the ability to be on equal footing to actually compete for the number 2 spot. It's not about being the starter next year. Jaden Daniels is that guy, but it's being able to get the same caliber of reps in spring football as Garrett Nussmeier, and that was not going to happen.
Yeah. Mike, before we let you go, we are seeing now that the national championship game's in the rearview mirror, some staffs starting to fill up, and a lot of new coaches and a lot of things. The LSU staff is intact for now, but I would expect that there will be openings at other places that will be attractive. What are you hearing right now as far as potential targets on the LSU staff, other places?
Man, I have not heard much on that. You might know more than I do on that. I've been so focused on a lot of this other stuff, but I don't believe somebody's going to get picked off.
Yeah, I don't know anything per se about a member of this staff or a job that's opening. I just know the landscape. That when we get to January and all of these jobs open up, that that this staff, the LSU staff, gets targeted every single year. So I just expect that to happen.
I think where the likelihood of the opportunities come from are your player personnel people, personnel directors, guys that actually have coaching experience that all of a sudden maybe get an opportunity to be an on-field coach somewhere.
Yeah. Mike, great job breaking the story yesterday. TigerBait.com, what's coming up next?
Yeah. Well, shoot, it's going to be following what might happen before the transfer portal closes. Sooner or later, we're going to be talking about a junior day, and of course, women's basketball tonight, men's basketball, spring practice will be here. Baseball practice starts next week. So, as you know, that people like to say, "Oh, it's your off season." Man, this is the busiest time of the year. I mean, you're going to have a stretch in a couple of months where, in the same day, you're going to have a press conference of one coach, a spring football practice, a women's basketball game, a baseball game to be covered. Everything can happen in one day.
As always, we appreciate it, Mike. Have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, Charlie, talk then. Thank you.
Mike Scarborough from TigerBait.com. We'll wrap it up when we come back. Take some of your questions out of the I've written some of them down that came up earlier in the hour, but if you want to fire in, we'll take them now in the chat. This is Hanny Time, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is Hanny Time.
Live music at Big Mike's continuing tonight. Eric Stelly on stage at Big Mike's, and tomorrow night it is the Chris LeBlanc Band, local favorite. Chris LeBlanc Band always puts on a good show. It's live music every weekend at Big Mike's. It's part of the down home, very family-friendly atmosphere in the restaurant, and then, for the grown-ups in the bar area for live music. Great place to watch sporting events, daily lunch specials right there in the heart of Denham Springs. Big Mike's, from their time on Bar Rescue, putting the Denham Springs Hall of Fame right in the front of the restaurant. It made themselves a real vital part of the community. Always going to enjoy your time there at Big Mike's. Happy hour drink specials 5 days a week. So if you're looking for a great meal, great atmosphere, some terrific live music, make it Big Mike's. On Aspen in Denham Springs, at Big Mike's, we're kind of a big deal.
In times of need, get a full list of phone numbers, websites, and other important emergency information on the Demco Stormwatch page at 1045ESPN.com.
Bayou Ford has $10,000 off MSRP on a new 2022 Ford F-150, plus no payments for 90 days and 2.9% APR for 72 months. All new Bayou vehicles come with a 1 million mile powertrain warranty. If you need sales or service, the crew at Bayou Ford is going to do right by you.
ServiceMaster Elite create clean, disinfected work environments. As a local business, we take pride in serving the New Orleans and Baton Rouge areas. Our cleaning protocols follow CDC and OSHA standards for healthcare settings, offices, senior living, restaurants, and industrial plants. Contact ServiceMaster Elite to get your operation ready for reopening with germ disinfection cleaning. ServiceMaster Elite, the trusted choice in professional cleaning since 1996.
Eli's always been into grilling. It took us a while to see it, but the signs were there.
What are you doing, Eli?
I knew grilling was my thing. I have been talking about it throughout my career.
Happy with the results?
I am. Got the new grill from barbecueguys.com. It performed great.
My advice, as I always told my boys,
do more of what you're born to do.
Barbecue Guys, for those who were born to grill.
You want cheese on your burger, Pops?
I'll take a little cheese.
You ever heard the tale of the misunderstood bull? A menacing beast who was born to float. A force of nature. The embodiment of grace. Quite grand, yet quiet and nimble. The Infiniti QX80.
Experience the Infiniti QX80 at your local Infiniti retailer.
At Auctioner, we know healing is a team sport. That's why we've partnered with world-renowned orthopedic surgeon Dr. James Andrews to create the Auctioner Andrews Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute. Whether you're a professional athlete or a weekend warrior, our team of specialists are dedicated to getting you back in the game. So whatever your reasons are for reaching your personal best, we've only got one. You. Auctioner Andrews Institute. Long live you.
Before we begin any electrical work here, we perform a home safety check that begins at your electrical panel to make sure that you and your family are safe. For all your upgrades, installations,
Hey, son, join me for Thursday's Hunt Palmer Show 1 to 3. Luke Johnson joins us one more time to recap the Saints season. We start looking at Wild Card Weekend. Hunt Palmer Show 1 to 3 weekdays, 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
This is Hanny Time with Charles Hannegriff on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
All right, some questions out of the chat. As you can imagine, the Walker Howard news and the quarterback situation, which was going to be a hot topic all offseason anyway, takes center stage. Jawan asks a reasonable question. He says Nuss will, that's more of a statement, says Nuss will leave after Daniels is awarded the starting job. He might. I don't know if he will or not. This is what I do know. There's only so much that the coaching staff can do as far as awarding playing time. When LSU plays Florida State in September, somebody has to go out there with the first unit, and somebody has to be the backup. So what's he supposed to do? Let's say Juwan's scenario is true, that Daniels is named the starter, which he was after the bowl game, pending spring practice and August practice. What if you said, no, Nussmeier's the starting quarterback, then Daniels leaves? Or what if you say nobody's a starting quarterback and you divide up the reps, like that scenario we went through earlier? At some point, you have to decide that there is a starting quarterback, whoever that is, and then somebody has to be the backup. And if the backup decides that they don't want to stay, then they can leave. That's just how it is. What you're saying could potentially happen. I just don't know what you're supposed to do about that. You can't divide the starting quarterback job in half. You have to put the reps in there some kind of way, and there's simply not enough to go around. So this is the age-old adage about who's the most popular guy in the room, the backup quarterback. Well, sure, but they made Daniels the starter for a reason. They looked at everybody. They decided he was their best option to win games. And by and large, I think they did the right thing. And they'll make that same decision in 2023. And is the odds-on favorite to be Jaden Daniels again? Yes, it is. That's just how it goes. Somebody said, did you see Hanny's face when Mike said Jaden Daniels is the guy? Full disclosure here. It is freezing every day in this control room. Today it's just a little bit extra cold, and I caught a blast. The look on my face, I remember I just caught a blast from the AC in here, okay? There's a lot of equipment in this room. The engineers have explained to us that they have to keep it on freezer levels. I try to come in here in sleeves every day. You've seen me put a sweatshirt on at times. Hester's got a sweatshirt. T-Bob's got a sweatshirt. Moscona's the only one that doesn't think it's cold in here, and that's because he has cold blood. Okay, it's the way it is, okay? Everybody else in the building thinks that we work in a meat freezer. Moscona doesn't. Good for him. I caught a blast from wherever the thing came from, and I made a face. Had nothing to do with Jaden Daniels. Question about other players in the portal. Yeah, Xavier Carter put himself in there earlier today. I think before the portal closes next week, you're looking at 3 more, maybe 4. Something like that. That's just a guess. We had a question about the Saints quarterback situation. First, for the person who asked, why would the Saints get anything in compensation for Sean Payton? We talk about that like it's a given. Probably not a bad idea to say that the Saints get compensation for Sean Payton because he is under contract through the 2024 season. Compensation has to be agreed upon by both clubs. What that compensation is, of course, of great speculation. But I did get a question about Derek Carr. Carr penned his farewell to Raider Nation earlier today. Carr's a fascinating case to me because quarterbacks with his level of success and experience do not come on the market very often. He's 31 years old. He's never been hurt. He's never had seriously hurt. He's played a minimum of 15 games a year every year that he's been in the league. He's been no off-the-field headache, and he started 142 games. Now, is he great? Is he Mahomes or Allen or Burrow or Herbert no. But there were teams that voluntarily went into this season with Carson Wentz as their starting quarterback. He's better than him. He voluntarily went into this season with Geno Smith as your starting quarterback. He's better than him. Voluntarily went into this season with Jameis Winston as your starting quarterback, and he's better than him. And I could go on. The Houston Texans voluntarily went into this season with Davis Mills as their starting quarterback. He's better than him. And like I said, I could go on, but we're almost at the end of the show. I don't know what's wrong with the guy. Obviously something, because this cat would be pretty high on my list. You win a Super Bowl with Derek Carr? I don't know, but he is better than all but a handful of options that are on the market. You know, you go with your guys in the draft and you say, well, you know, I'm betting on the come, fine, but Derek Carr's better than a lot of your options out there. Hunt Palmer is next. We'll see you Jolie Pearl tonight with Jimmy Ott's Game Time. For Casey and Taylor, I'm Charles Hannigrove saying thank you and good afternoon. This has been Handy Time, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Louisiana.